the music we're sharing today is really rich in detail. So if you have headphones or earbuds, I really recommend that you use those. I have a nice thing to share. I'm bringing you greetings from Dr. Adolphus Helstork, who wanted to join us but could not, but he sends his regards, and he knows about this meeting that we're having today, so he's very supportive. The other thing I would bring to your attention, people have asked me, so what's going on, in the panels on the back? I'm the youngest son of the late Reverend John N. Doggett, a very well-known and remembered Methodist minister who was very prominent on the West Coast, in particular in Los Angeles, of the civil rights movement. And this is a panel of material of my family story in the movement. My father in particular was the treasurer of the Western Christian Leadership Conference, which was the Los Angeles-based West Coast fundraising arm of SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, that was in operation from about 1960 to 1964. And my father was in charge of raising money for the Freedom Riders like John Lewis, Diane Nash. So we've heard, of course, in recent weeks, a lot about the Freedom Riders and civil rights movement. So, my family was right there. And as a very little boy, seeing all these tall trees and tagging along to all these events, I was right there with it. So that is what that's about. The last thing in terms of house rules, I don't think this is going to happen since I've locked the meeting. I've had to learn that now on Zoom. Unfortunately, we're in a political climate now that if you don't lock the meeting, there are people that troll meetings and interrupt. And so if that should happen, it happened once with me. If that should happen and I have to prematurely end the meeting, come right back because I'll just, start again. It's an unfortunate statement of our times, unfortunately. So I'm going to now go into share screen. We're going to be in share screen for the next, I'm going to say 6 to 8 minutes. I have some prepared opening remarks, and please enjoy. As I said again, if you have earbuds or headphones, I recommend it. All right, so let's go into share screen. Okay. All right. Okay, so welcome to Light, Hope, and Healing, the spiritual music of Jarrell Gray, Dave Ragland, Colin Lett. It is really a wonderful honor to be able to do this work today. You three are just so gifted, and you represent the hope of the new generation of composers, young Black composers who are taking the mantle of well-known people like Moses Hogan and Adolphus Helstork and others forward. So I'm really grateful to honor you with this. And I'm going to go to our next image as soon as I can get into this. Okay, so there's a lot been said about light and spiritual light. And I'm going to share some thoughts that were written and prepared by Whitney Hopler. That's her title of her work is called The Spiritual Meaning of Light in Angels and Miracles. So light has significant spiritual meanings associated with both angels and miracles. Angels often appear as beings of light, and they use light, electromagnetic energy, when traveling to and from earth and heaven. Miraculous events such as apparitions often feature light appearing in supernatural ways. Light plays, of course, a foundational role in creation. Many creation stories say that God created light before anything else. For example, the Bible famously records in Genesis 1:3 that on the first day of creation, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Ever since God made light, energy and light has fueled so much of our experience of what life and what the planet is. Spiritually, of course, light is a symbol of life that comes from a loving creator who cares for creation. St. Francis Assisi, the patron saint of animals, who famously made this remark about light: "Praise be to God for all his creatures, and especially our brother, the sun, who brings us the day and brings us the night. How beautiful he is, how splendid, oh God, he reminds us of you." So these are really important ways in which light becomes not just conceptualized in our experience and on paper, and of course in spiritual identifications through religion, but also as it relates to music. So light is often also associated with wisdom. You know, the word enlighten means to give knowledge or understanding. Spirituality, light stands for truth, the good side of the spiritual realm. Overcoming lies from the evil side of the spiritual realm. People who are spiritually enlightened have the wisdom to choose truth over deception. So light is also that. And of course, and last but not least, light is a spiritual symbol of hope. And as we all know, in many of in religions around the world, but in particular at Christmas, we decorate with electric lights to symbolize Jesus Christ as the light of the world and the Savior. In the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, a similar thing is done with using the ancient Hanukkah miracle of light. So light is very important to today, to the discussion of today, because of what's going on in our world. As I don't need to tell you, we see this challenge of this darkness that seems to be gathering in our country and around the world. But, you know, I and you believe that light will conquer darkness. You know, I think that it's not only in the Bible, but I think it's in everything in literature and, of course, in music. And there is no place where this is more true than with our ancestors, African-American slaves, who identified with the stories of light, hope, and healing in the Hebrew Bible to sustain them and to uplift them during enslavement. The Negro Spirituals canon is filled with this, including, or specifically, in Bright Mansions Above, Oh, What a Beautiful City, Every Time I Feel the Spirit, In That Great Gift in the Morning, and certainly, but last but certainly not least, He's Got the Whole World in His Hand. These are just iconic symbols of hope. So we're going to go now to the next slide, and I will let you hear a wonderful example. Next, we come to Jarrell Gray. Of course, I'm hopeful you were able to hear everything well in that last piece. Thank you very much. Jarrell is just a really gifted, wonderfully gifted composer. I'm going to begin again. A composer, conductor, musician. He's a graduate of Southern University and M College, where he received his Bachelor's of Music degree. He's a native of Chicago. He has quite a bit of music that's been published, including his composition, the setting of the composition Rock the Cradle, Mary. It's published with Hal Leonard. His arrangement of Keep Your Lamps Trimmed and Burning is with Walton Music. The Old Rugged Cross, Nobody Knows the Troubles I See, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, I Surrender All. I'm Seeking for a City, and No Dying There are GIA publications. His works have been performed all across the country, and he is the founder and director of the Neoteric Chorale and has been featured on TV on NBC 33. Our first selection is a glorious one. It is one that I have a very strong feeling is going to be picked up and become very important. It's his setting of the Serenity Prayer. It was submitted to the George Shirley competition this year and won a grand prize, I understand. And for good reason. It's a beautiful setting. I have heard it and I have gone back and listened to it time and time again. It's gorgeously performed by Brandy Sutton, a soprano associated with the Metropolitan Opera, and with her accompanist Wayne Bruckner. Let us go forward and listen to that, and we will come back out of shared screen and have a discussion about this particular work.
And the
Jerrell, it's glorious. It is truly one of the more glorious pieces I have heard. And I have been associated with some pretty impressive music, by representing and having an association with Anthony Davis and Adolphus Hailstork, and also a master of art song, the Scottish Black composer Richard Thompson. Tell us about this work, Jarrell. This is really, really special.
I wrote that, or rather I set that text after my mother passed away. First, my grandmother passed away, and then my mother a year later. And after having watched my mother fight for her life for a month and a half on a ventilator, I found myself uttering those words, the text of the Serenity Prayer, God grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and literally having to almost breathe the text. And it was not, in fact, after my mother passed, and I was sitting here at my home and continually saying that during the grieving phase, that I began to hear music to it. And generally, when we think of peace, we think of very serene and very happy. But often, and as I really read the text of that particular poem, the need for peace suggests that there is anguish and suffering as a foundation. And so the first chord that you hear, and there's a motif, if you will, of arpeggios consistently throughout it on the words peace or serenity or things of sort in that matter. But you have this open fifth against a tritone.
Yeah.
And in that, you get this sense of serene peace, but you also sense turbulence and anguish. And so all of that is intentional. Even the repetition of I need serenity, I believe it's repeated 3 or 4 times throughout the piece, where in fact I felt the performer could understand and give out the fact that each of those were different and that should be said differently. So that piece is intricate, and honestly, when I was writing it, I was a bit worried. I said, "Okay, Lord, I'm going to write what you're giving me. I said, but I don't know how this will take with the general public. I said, because what you're giving me is not necessarily commonly done. And I know that a palette is subjective at times. And so I was a bit worried that many would not understand why I started the piece on the chord that I did, with the use of major 13ths and 11ths and those incorporations intentionally, and then to start the piece on the chord and then to end on its augmented version of it to represent a bit more of peace. So just simply playing with theory and pushing the norm and birthing a piece. Truly, all of those harmonies and dissonances, they represent how I was feeling in the moments that I was writing it. And in the about the work section of it, particularly with this pandemic that we're going through, I've in fact included that in the about the work, that even though I have my reasoning of why I wrote it, certainly every performer and even anyone who's listening can certainly apply their own life hardships into it, to identify with the text and place themselves, as I've encouraged the performer, to place themselves at the feet of God, because ultimately it's Him who you're asking for serenity. There's a section in the text that says, taking as you did this sinful world, not as it is, not as I would have it. And that section is even slower because in us asking for peace, in order to truly get this supreme happiness that I elaborate toward the end of the piece, we have to take on the very sufferings that Christ did. And if you notice that Christ ultimately had to die for us to receive that ultimate happiness. And so in that same liking, the Bible says that we are crucified with Him. Our flesh, we have to daily crucify ourselves. And so that suffering, that anguish, that sorrow, that grief, the void that we feel, all of these different hardships that we face throughout life, certainly it's all included in that one text that's generally just said at AAA meetings and things of sort like that, Alcohol Anonymous. And as I began to do research, and I was just astounded to find out that there was more to it upon the initial research of it, because I had not heard about the other section. And so I just generally knew the first stanza, if you will. And so as I began to research and I read through it, I said, my God, today, I said, this sounds like the prayers that I'm praying on a normal basis and dealing with grief, picking up the pieces and moving forward, trying not to give up and everything else that comes with the natural flow of life. And so anyway, that piece was written on that foundation, and thank God it's being received well. I thank God for that. Certainly it was not written out of entertainment. I can honestly say that was not, that was written out of anguish. But I'm so glad that it's serving its purpose, and it's bigger than me. And that's what I'm most glad about.
Indeed. I cannot tell you how much this touched me. And why I listened to it over and over again. I too was with my mother, who would have loved this. I cannot tell you how much she would have loved this. Frances was all about not just music, but music from the heart and from the soul. And your use of harmonic language and how you open and close this is also haunting in its beauty. And I see this, not just simply going far, I see this in church services, you know, when we're doing collection, I mean, this is an iconic piece, just as Hail Stork's Alleluia is in the same way. But it is just, you know, I think of my parents, the late Reverend John Doggett and Frances Doggett, who were so supportive of young composers and young musicians of color like yourself. They would, through me, as a vessel, be so grateful to you. I really want to share that because my whole life is steeped in music, and certainly music of the spirit. And that's why I decided to create this this Zoom panel to look at how music informs our experience and sustains us, as it did, this piece did for you. It sustains. I cannot tell you how significant the role of music was for me at the time of my mother's struggle and at her time of her passing, as well as my father. In fact, you know, I'll just briefly say this as an aside, and then we'll go on. You know, I was a little boy, very little boy, at the dawn of the civil rights movement. And my sister was a mezzo, just so you know. So I come from that kind of background. I was in piano and cello. This is all in Los Angeles at the University of Southern California Music School, School of Music. And I was shadowing my big sister. And, you know, she was fortunate to be in an elite choir that would be kind of compared to like Chanticleer today, but obviously a co-ed choir. And they were tapped to do a tour. The State Department tapped them to do a tour. And because my father was so prominent in LA in the movement, we were friends through our church choir director, A.C. Bilbrew, a name probably is historic and not known to most today, but she was associated with Jester Harrison, a name, of course, that all of us know. And Jester Harrison actually coached my sister. As a little kid, it was a big deal at our house when Jester Harrison came over because my parents had been so involved with music, and in particular with the music of spirit and this Negro spiritual in particular. I grew up in a house of Marian Anderson. My parents were originally from Philadelphia. And as a teenager, my mother was, before the term groupie was out there, was a groupie of Marian Anderson in her youth. So you know, by the time I was 4, I knew all about, 4 to 5, 6, of course, I know all about Marian Anderson. And of course, at that time in particular, you know, her iconic, you know, he's got the whole world in his hands. But I just wanted to say that to encourage you, because you did not know that what my journey had been, also dealing with the loss of both my parents within a year apart, and how this piece has actually touched me in this time. So I just want to share that. And that's the purpose and the value of music, to make a difference, to lift us, to heal us, to sustain us. So just wanted to say that. And we're going to go on next to our next piece, which is another glorious piece, and probably one of your most famous, Rock the Cradle Mary. It is associated and often done at Christmas, but I feel that it should be done all year round. It is glorious. And talking about chords, I want everyone probably everyone has heard this already, but pay attention to how this ends. That is just, I was just, you know, working with composers, I'm like, good Lord, that is such a talent to see that kind of chord to end this. And then going back, of course, to just sharing in this conversation we're having, you know, about my background. So as a little kid in church choir, you know, I sang. And at Christmas, of course, it's Mary had a baby in the Black church, or Black AME Methodist church at least. It's Mary had a baby, and in particular, Go Tell It on the Mountain. How many times, you know, did I sing Go Tell It on the Mountain? You know, but this work, Jarrell, should be added to that canon. I'm really serious.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's right there. It's right there. I mean, if Mary had a baby, Go Tell It on the Mountain, and Children Go Where I Send Thee, if those are the icons historically, this is right there. So I just want to say that I'm just really pleased with this and have this feeling also about this, and why it all obviously already is popular. So it's performed in this performance that we're going to go and share screen by the UNL Chamber Singers with Marcus Garrett. Conductor is from a Welcome All Winters concert from December 2019. And let's go back into, is there anything else I should note before we go on? I'm seeing things, I just want to make sure. Okay, good. So we'll go back into share screen. All right, and we'll go to the next image here. We'll go to the next one. There we go. I call that on some level, I call that on some level the take six chord. You know, that the way that ends, it's got that really special harmony. Talk about it, because you know, I mean, only take six could have ended that work like that. So,
well, it's interesting that you say take six. That's interesting. I have not listened much to Take Six, but I've found that certain people do say that regularly. And truly, it's just knowing the play, the interchange and play of dissonances. If you go throughout all of my works, you'll see my intentional play with dissonances. There's a lot of music out there and about that simply focuses on tonal and major harmony, but I think that there's a special place in dissonance. But anyway, in regard to how and why that piece was written, Dr. Merolin Carter sent me a collection of spirituals. And in it, there was Rock the Cradle Mary in what I call a lined spiritual. There was no harmony. There were only one sentence. There was only one sentence and a few spec notes in regard to an indicated melody of sort. When I looked at it, I said, Rock the Cradle Mary. And so I read through the first little stanza that they had. And then from that, I birthed the piece that you all just heard. And in my game plan, I thought, if this child is to be rocked all night, why would this child need to be rocked if he is in fact the savior of the world? He has all at his disposal. He's our savior. Why would this child need to be rocked all night? And so I chose to tell a chronological order of events that happened in this child's life that would cause this child to ultimately cry and need to be rocked all night. Why would he cry? Because he knows that these events are going to have to take place in order for him to truly save us. And that's a reason for Mary to have to rock him all night long. That's a reason for Mary to have to carry him all night long. And so on the piece, it in fact has at the beginning in a rocking manner. And I love the fact that Dr. Garrett took that literal. So you see the choir, in fact, at different times having this sense of rocking. To me, that moves the piece along. To me, that moves, that gets the phrasing and the right feel, and even so much as the syncopations. In regard to the harmonies and the dissonances and even the modulation, we talk about him being lost in the temple when he was 12 years old. Then we talk about the child healing the sick and making the blind to see, raising the dead, and even setting the captives free. And in that, that's simply dialogue that you are taught. You've read it in the Bible, but you're also taught that in church. You hear that he's done these things, and you see it throughout Scripture. And so before we talk about the most ultimate sacrifice that he made, which is why I understand you say you could see it being done year round. Certainly, with that part of the piece, you could think for it to be done during Lent or Easter, if you will, or leading up to. But there's a special section there which modulates into that, where it prepares the listener, which is why the voices have the leap and the dramatic, intense, and buildup that they have. Mary rock all night. And then it tells us this, what happens. This child, this same child that did all of this to save us and healed and whatnot, this child was led to Pilate's bar. Crown of thorns had he. They all cried, crucify him. And they nailed this child to a tree. Mary, you rock all night. You stay all night, because see, this child, you understand, has to go through something in order to save this world. And so those harmonies, those syncopations, and the reason why it ends on that chord is to show the real dreariness and murkiness of that night that the sun refused to shine. You understand? And so all of that's wrapped up in it, and it's all intentional, and it takes some study, not just from a compositional point, but from a theological standpoint. It takes some study to really bring the text to life, and that's what produced the piece that we just heard.
That's amazing. That's quite a statement, of course. And again, being the youngest child of a minister who was very engaged in music, my word, I could see this. If my dad was still living, Um, I mean, both my parents. I mean, Jerrell, just, there's, all three of you are gifted. But I just want to say that there's a special, something that I feel in those two works we've sampled. It's part of my journey in music and part of my journey and perhaps even my purpose being here to lift and share and to celebrate those who can create this light, this hope, this healing. So, and certainly you are one of them. So thank you so much for that. We're going to go back into screen share and go on to our next destination, which is our wonderful composer, Dave Ragland. Let's see here. So Dave Ragland is a two-time Emmy-nominated composer, vocalist, pianist, and conductor. Hailed as uber talented by the Nashville scene, Dave received an Emmy nomination for composition and musical direction for First Art Museum's Nick Cave Feet, Nashville. Dave received a second Emmy nomination for I'm Troubled, a musical collaboration with Nashville's ballet Gerald Watson and violinist Chandler Custer. Mr. Ragland was nominated for Best Director of a musical by First Night Honors for Wild Card Productions' run of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. In his first commission of the company's history, Dave Ragland has composed One Vote One for Nashville Opera, the opera commemorating the centennial of the women's suffrage. Will commence the Nashville Opera's 40th season. And of course, this past week, the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, has been celebrated, so it's very topical. And Dave, in collaboration with the Inversion Vocal Ensemble, Shackled Feet Dance, and the Diaspora Orchestra, is slated to debut an opera called Steal Away as an artist in residence for Oz Arts in its upcoming season. What we're going to listen to today are blended. I have an audio video team house that I use. We're blending three excerpts into two. And this is the first one is from a free day of music concert sponsored by the National Symphony in their Symphony Hall from 2016. It is called the Spiritual Suite, and from it, we'll hear two excerpts featuring Patrick Dailey, countertenor, and Adrianna Clemons, soprano. And then we go on to an excerpt of another wonderful work called I Believe. So let's go forward into share screen. Let's go Dave, David Ragland, unmute yourself. Yes.
I'm muted.
Okay. How wonderful, how wonderful. The use of light. Dave, your use of light comes across so beautifully. Please share with us the background of these works. They are wonderful as well.
Well, sure. I'll just start in, I guess, chronological order. You heard the excerpt. There's a Man Going Round, which I specifically arranged for Patrick Dailey when at the time when he was with our group Inversion Vocal Ensemble, and we had that engagement with the Symphony Center. And I think it was the first time for the Free Day of Music that they allowed, like, just like a conglomerate of young Black artists there on the main stage. We had no idea the invitations were going to be that. So it's like, oh my God, they invited us. And I was like, oh my God, now we have to fill the space. So that's, we got a lot of our friends who play instruments, a lot of my friends. And that's how you saw the young Black orchestra behind us. That was behind us in that clip. And so I actually composed that pretty much for that occasion, I want to say. Patrick had wanted something. And I was like, all right, fine, Patrick, out here. Literally sat down and put some chords, because I love my good jazz chords with my sevenths and all of that. And that's how that came about. And I just orchestrated it out, elaborated it out for a fuller ensemble with that. And he's ever since kind of taken that, that song and just ran with it. I don't really have much to say about it, like, just spiritually or too deep or anything about that. Just that, hope that this listener got kind of a sense of wandering. That just however death comes or pass, just kind of that wonder where I didn't want it to be traditionally that minor key, bogged down, hard C minor, but just kind of like if it's a spirit, how does the spirit move?
You get that. And you get that. I'm just going to interrupt and say, you get that. And especially how you use climaxes through all of the three examples. The idea of light and of being able to transcend and how you use, and set the music so that the person feels that one has transcended the challenge comes across beautifully. Please continue. I just wanted to interject that.
Oh yeah, thank you very much, sir. And so with the Weeping Mary, and so I know for sake of time we couldn't hear the whole thing, but yeah, with that one, I think I arranged that one kind of too for the same program, just to have something for Adrianna, the wonderful soprano Adrianna Clemons, something for her to kind of highlight her and showcase her. And so I heard a friend of mine in recital do the Burley, Weeping Mary, which is kind of relatively short, beautiful piece. I love it. And so I just wanted to kind of really dig into that and kind of elaborate just on that message. If anyone here is like Weeping Mary, draw upon your Jesus and he'll draw nigh. So, what does that drawing nigh, what is it, what can it feel like? What does it sound like? Can it be something more comforting? And like you said, with, the use of light, with that particular orchestration, it's, piano, cello, oboe, and flute. I didn't want anything just too heavy. I just wanted something just that kind of light and kind of lifting. With that one. And the last piece, I believe, which I think has kind of become my runaway hit. And it's strophic in 3 parts. And I think we just heard the last one. That actually is, it's based off of the kind of now famous text from the Holocaust that was found in the concentration camp, the transcribed writing. The whole text is what I believe. In the sun, even when it's not shining, I believe in love when I feel it not, and I believe in God even when he is silent. And I was not familiar with that text until I was finishing up my second bachelor's at Tennessee State University with the master singers with Susan Kelly, and we went to ACDA. And the regional chorus there that we all were in was singing the Even When He Is Silent. I'm sorry, forgive me, I forgot who wrote and composed it. Y'all probably know. But the Even When He Is Silent, that beautiful, like is it SATB? I want to say SATB arrangement, and there's an SSAA as well too. And we performed that, and I was like, can I create something with that? Can I hear an art song with that? Because I went to YouTube and it's like I searched, does anybody? I believe when when he is silent. I couldn't find maybe like one random art song. So okay, cool. I'll set that, and it's kind of taken off ever since. It debuted at the African American Art Song Alliance. Wow. Of course, with Dr. Darrell Taylor. And it was, runaway kind of hit there, and it's been going ever since. Definitely one of my favorite compositions. Just with that, I kind of wanted to make it something to where everyone can get on board with and kind of relate with, especially, during this year, it's gotten kind of a second wind and a second, kind of life, just dealing with, a pandemic and just so much going on socio-politically, that, the message of, believe in God, even in spite of, even when it seems like, he's not listening or even when he's silent, it's kind of, struck, pun intended, struck a chord with a lot of people at this time.
No, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And frankly, I will say that I have intention in 2021, 2022 to do some programming, content programming. And I think it's important to expand the canon of what is seen as an art song, as you were mentioning. I believe, Jerrell's Serenity Prayer, and others. Really, I intend to put into content for music festivals that feature not only light, but feature young African-American composer talent. And I should add to that, of course, Colin's Were You There, which we'll hear, which is a striking setting for trio that I had never heard before. I mean, I'm in the mix enough to have heard, various different transcriptions and settings of all of the famous works, but I am taken and moved and happy to know all three of you, because you are all three gifted. Of course, uniquely, each one of you has your unique voice, but together you are just an important statement that I want to lift and others to know about. So I will say that to you. Yeah, I really love your I Believe. So, and I wish that I could, there was this, working on a number of these, I got a little concerned that I would have too much content. So I decided to just do basically two, each of you have two segments. And in your case, I just blended the three, but wonderful. Thank you, Dave. Did I hear something? Did I mention it in the remarks from your bio? Isn't there something else that's going on into 2021 that you're involved with, or did I cover it?
I want to say you covered it. Yeah, 1 Nashville Opera, and then Steal Away with the Oz Arts, and Composer Fellowship with 91 Classical here in Nashville.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And we hope that the pandemic will not be with us for a whole lot longer. We recognize there's too much to say, and I won't even go there. Okay, I think you know where I'm going. But we recognize the possibility that it certainly impacts very much the art of singing and choral singing, which is what we're discussing. But I'm hopeful that with social distancing and with mask use, that perhaps it still can be part of the musical experience. I work with a couple of composers in particular, like Adolphus Hailstork, who 2021 is all about the world of strings, because apparently you can you can socially distance strings and have them with facial coverings. But I also think it's possible for singing, and I'm hopeful for that. So, all right, so we're going to move on to our last but not least, Colin Lett. So I'm going to go back into the screen share, and thank you, Jerrell, for bringing that little thing to my attention. I usually don't have that happen. So just letting you know, this is not, they're just a chance, a total chance. But we're going to go on to Colin Lett, and I will go back into screen share. Colin Lett, conductor. Colin is a native of Selma, Alabama. He holds his master's degree of, of divinity from Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University, a master's of arts in choral conducting, and a Bachelor of Arts in vocal music from Morgan State University. Colin has 4 musical arrangements in circulation in the African American Church music series of GIA publications, and 2 musical arrangements in the Jason Max Ferdinand choral series of Walton publications. Colin is the conductor of the Selma High School Choir and an ordained Baptist minister. He is a life member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Phi Mu Alpha Symphonia Fraternity of America Incorporated, and a friend of the arts of Sigma Alpha Iota International Music Fraternity Incorporated. And we're going to begin to listen and come back for discussion to his setting of I Will Walk in Jesus, which features Patrick Dailey, the Morgan State University Choir, under the direction of George Conway. So let us go to that. So, Colin, I have to say, I believe if he were still living, Moses Hogan would come up and congratulate you because you clearly have taken the mantle forward. As I said, I grew up in a spirituals household and a choral household, and having Jester Hairston as the landmark of my parents. It's wonderful. Tell us about it.
First of all, let me just say I'm very honored to be a part of this. I felt like we were friends at first, Bill, but you put my music after these two great guys, and well,
please don't hold it against me.
Phil and Dave talked about theirs, but and it's interesting. This was a piece that I wrote. I feel like when I was a kid. I didn't start writing until maybe my senior year of high school, and I was always listening to Moses Hogan.
Interesting.
But when I got on the campus of Morgan State University, watching Dr. Nathan Carter direct, I would go to my dorm room practicing like him, and I was just hearing some sounds, and that I was feeling that rhythm one night, and just writing in the dorm room, imagining what would Morgan sound like, singing this song. So, which is why you have so much Debussy, because it was such a big grand sound that the choir had at that particular time. But this arrangement is one of those that really kind of goes from the field to the concert spiritual, where I'm talking to you. I'm about to talk to you like you have the score in front of you, but the very first page or the very first verse is not as rhythmic. It's more of that moaning. It's more of the, just the simpler statement. And then in the second, verse there, you have that rhythm picking up. And that's more so the influence that I will have gotten from guys like Moses Hogan, Hall Johnson, and the like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really take the patient up a notch on the concert spiritual versus your more traditional spiritual.
Yeah, no, it's quite clear. And I think it's very interesting to look at and consider this whole idea about the concert spiritual versus, simply the settings for voice and piano. But I think all of it is important. And I'm grateful for you continuing this, for all of you, but specifically since I'm talking to you, Colin, for continuing that tradition, because it's an important tradition that should never be lost. And I'm older than I think all three of you, and we've seen, or I have seen specifically, in the 90s and going into 2000s, this shift away, and the music ministry of the African American church going from the traditions of the Negro spiritual and the Black church hymnal to, praise gospel, which is fine, but there is still value to having this. I think this is not something that should just be something that your mother or your grandmother or your aunts would appreciate, but I think this is something that all of us, especially younger people, the younger generation, needs to realize this iconic foundation of spirit, of light, spirit, hope that is a part of the African American experience, and certainly part of the Black church experience. And I'm a very big proponent of. I bear the torch of this, if you will, because there are ministers of music who feel, oh, that's old school, or everything's now praise gospel, which is fine. But I believe that there is a way of continuing to integrate that. So there's this more of this understanding of where we have come, and that the older still remains. And to that point specifically, I'm going to definitely date myself. So my grandmother's favorite spiritual, which is not a spiritual, but a part of the Black church music canon, I'm going to call it that, is one that we just heard recently at John Lewis's funeral. However, in the younger generation, people don't think about it. I mean, it's considered an old folks kind of thing, and that's "His Eye is on a Sparrow." I mean, how iconic is that? And other classic hymns, we need to not let that be something that only people in the 70s or 80s remember, from being in church in the 1950s, in the Black church of the 1950s. This little light of mine. I can't tell you, it was a spiritual become a freedom song, keep your hand on the plow, hold on, that's, I'm not, what is it? I'm not going to let anyone turn me around. All of this is important that we as, I'm going to say, we as caretakers of this legacy, this rich musical and spiritual legacy, we really need to find a way to continue to be ambassadors for this, not just for our generation, but for generations to come. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents, please.
Bill, if you allow me, it's interesting that you bring up those freedom songs and the civil rights movement and the like. I am a native of Selma, Alabama. I am a son of Tabernacle Baptist Church, which is where the first mass meeting of the voters' rights movement was held. So, seeing people come to the Selma for Bloody Sunday, people like C.T. Vivian and Reverend Shuttlesworth before he died, and, so many of those other, John Lewis and the like, and hearing these songs as I was growing up. And it's interesting now that I have grown even from what I said as a kid when I wrote that I want Jesus to walk with me, where now my expression, the light that I try to shed is a reflection of that light that brings about, social change and even activism through composition. And I think many ways are doing that by just trying to shed light and show that, hey, our music is just as spectacular. What leader was better than that Serenity Prayer we just heard? What could you find out of Bach or Mozart or even Beethoven that was better than what we just heard from Dave Ragland? So our is just as special and should be, put on the same plateau as we other composers from other cultures.
I completely agree, and I particularly focus us on the idea that in the Black church or churches, because it's no longer just the Baptist, Methodist and AME as it used to be, but it's the Church of God in Christ and all of the other Pentecostal and non-denominational. There is a place for all of this. I feel that there is a place, and that we need to be the messengers for that. I mean, his eye is on the sparrow, and if I can help someone, or how I got over, I grew up in the era of Mahalia Jackson, so I am dating myself. All of, what is it? Down by the Riverside. I mean, these are all, older, but I think iconic and foundational, and that's where I'm coming from. So, and to that point, your setting of Were You There? I mean, we all know the Roland Hayes editions and others, but your version, I'd never heard that setting for a trio like that. It's just glorious. And to that point, so we're going to listen to Colin's setting of Were You There? It's sung in a live performance that was at a concert called Hold On. It's sung by Jasmine Calabarios, soprano, Michael Richardson, countertenor, and Courtney Porter, mezzo. It's really glorious. And it also needs to be part of the canon that I've been talking about, of how songs of the spirit or spiritual songs are also art songs. And it is my intention to bring all of your music, be forewarned, I'm going to bring all of your music into the light of day in a different setting, so that people understand that it is not just the art songs that we know of and we think of with that are associated with Black composers, but that the canon must be expanded to include this as well. So we'll go back into share screen. And I believe this is our last example of the three of our music. And then I'm going to close with a wonderful one. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll know what it is right away. But it's one of the most glorious recordings of this particular spiritual ever put into record recording. It's iconic, and it is all about light. So let's go back and share screen, and then as soon as these two pieces are over, actually, as soon as the first one's over, because we'll come back and let Colin tell us more about it. So let me go forward. Colin, just wonderful. In particular, Colin, you'll know what I'm about to say. This would be so wonderful performed as an offertory or a communion. This is the music of offertory and communion, for sure. I love it. So, please.
Yeah, but definitely, this is my expression of Black church and the kind of Black church that I come from. You know, like I said, I'm the son of Tabernacle Baptist Church. We're a hymn church. But with this particular piece, to be honest, I probably, if I had my choice, I probably would have only written choral music, you know, throughout. But when I was a student at Morgan, my friends would ask me to write art song arrangements. So if it was just up to me, I never probably would have written this piece. But so I wrote this piece for 3 friends in Phi Mu Alpha for bass, baritone, and tenor originally. And some of my sisters ended up performing it at Morgan, and it kind of just took off from there and became some people's favorites. This piece really is, I wrote this one when I was in seminary. So with some of the literature that we were reading, you know, it kind of drew me to this one. In particular, I'm thinking about the book, A Lesson Before Dying. And I think Ernest Gaines starts the book, if I'm remembering correctly. I was there, but I wasn't there. So it kind of took me to this spiritual, thinking about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. You know, because the third question, was there? You know, I wasn't there, wasn't born yet, but I was there. So, you know, with that kind of haunting as the backdrop, you know, for arranging this spiritual, you know, it kind of had that little toll to it. Boom, 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 boom. So that's just kind of that little haunting motif in the back that just kind of keeps the song giving it that heartbeat. And something that I do that kind of unconscious, I quote those arrangers and those composers that kind of came before me. In this particular song, I can hear the quotes that I did for Dr. Nathan Carter, who was my teacher at Morgan State, but I can also hear my quote from Moses Hogan as well. So Dr. Nathan Carter wrote a piece, a hymn arrangement of "Oh for a Faith That," and it kind of has that same rhythmic motif that's kind of in the background in the accompaniment. And as I'm listening again here to "Were You There" after all of these years, I'm hearing that same background motif. But also too with Moses Hogan, he did I think the collection was called Deep River, and he had this great bass that was singing one of his pieces. I think it might have been actually "Were You There," but on the end of Walter Bonham, I think was his name, and he went up to this nice falsetto as a bass, and I couldn't help but do that quote in tribute to him, kind of at the end there. And if you had heard the bass baritone and the tenors do it, they would have gone to a gentle falsetto at the end. And that's kind of a typical thing for me, more subdued endings, more so than those big larger than life endings. Even as you heard in the "I Want Jesus to Walk With Me," even after all of the big grandness in the climax and some of the choruses, it ended with a very nice subdued ending, kind of similar to how kind of quietly ends. Just to finish it off very, very quietly and sort of pensively, to just still lingering with that thought. Were you there? I was there, but I wasn't there. So.
I think it's great. I think it's a beautiful arrangement. I am, as I said, I am determined to take each of your music forward. I think there is great value and meaning, and in particular, as you know, I'm a marketing agent, a marketing rep. There are so many churches and ministers of music that don't know of any of your music, of settings. I mean, and I think all of it. I mean, I'm not just talking about Black church. I'm talking about the range of churches. there's a number of people, actually a person who was going to join us who's not, but she'll see the edited recording. And I mean, she runs a very large choir, so and she was interested she will be interested in everything here. So I think that's the beauty and the value, and I think all of you are just, Colin, if we're talking to you directly, of course, what a gift. And at this particular setting of where you're there, I'm going to say it again. I cannot imagine, or I will say it in a different way. If I'm in a position to meet not only ministers of music, but also pastors, I'm going to insist that they hear and consider where you're there, because it's not just beautiful by itself, but it would be and is so essential to any service. I mean, it is so iconic for me personally, and I'm obviously projecting, but not just at Easter. I'm talking about like communion, regular communion and regular offertory music. It's glorious. It's really glorious. So I just want to say that. So we're going to close now. I'm going to finish basically, as I started to say, we're going to listen to an iconic recording by an iconic singer of a work that deals and speaks of its nature about the idea of light, hope, and healing. I hope you'll enjoy it. I think we will probably, after we finish with that, I'll come back out of share screen, and if there's anything else, we can have a continuing conversation, but we'll go right now into share screen. Florence Quivar is Just incredible. I had the good fortune of knowing her, meeting her when I was on a community board associated with Los Angeles Opera in the 1990s. During this time period that this recording was made, it's just glorious. It's glorious, and the setting, of course, is very iconic. And it is it is a wonderful way to bookend this idea about light and hope and healing. All of the work, all of the music, all of you are part of this gift of light and this gift of hope and healing. I'm so hopeful that others will discover that fact as well. Please, if any of you have something to say, please let me know. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. And I will have this recording edited up for obvious reasons, and I'll upload it, and you can share it, and you'll be able to share it. No, it's my pleasure to do this. I am very proud of each of you. I just want to make sure you know that. I'm really, what a gift, what a gift. And there is no better time than now. I mean, not just in the pandemic, but everything that we're going through here in the States, what our people are going through, and what's going on in the world, than to lift this light of music that we've shared today, definitely. So thank you all. And to the future, we'll definitely be in touch. Okay. All right. So bye for now. All right. Take care.